today's webinar, where we'll be exploring what's next for restaurant tech through the lens of the recent 2025 Restaurant Technology Outlook Report presented by Nation's Restaurant News and Restaurant Business. I'm 𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗡𝗘𝗖𝗧, Senior Director of Media Intelligence and Custom Content for the Informa Food Service Group, which includes NRN and Restaurant Business. I'm joined by my co-host, Mark Brando, our Associate Director of Research and Insights, as well as a panel of expert speakers that we'll bring on and introduce in just a moment. Today's webinar is brought to you in part by our sponsors, QSR Automations, OpenTable, Placer AI, SoundHound AI, and 𝗪𝗧, and you'll get a chance to hear from representatives from each of them later in the webcast. First, a little bit of housekeeping. There we go. If you have any audio or visual issues during the broadcast, almost all of them can be resolved by refreshing your browser. So hit that F5 key or Command R if you're a Mac user. Make sure you've enabled pop-ups and all your speakers are all set up correctly. If you run into any problems, you can hit the help button or drop a note into the Q&A widget on your screen, and one of our producers will help you out. And then if you have questions for the speakers, you can drop those into the Q&A widget at any time as well, and we'll get to as many as we can toward the end of the broadcast. Our presenters today are joining us from our 5 sponsor companies. We have RJ Hotovy of Placer AI, Scott Hudson of OpenTable, Brian Wayne of QSR Automations, Jeff Loukas of SoundHound AI, and 𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗡𝗖𝗧 of 𝗪𝗧. They're going to join us throughout the broadcast as we introduce some of the data from our Restaurant Technology Outlook Report. This is a survey of nearly 600 restaurant operators on their investment plans around tech, their pain points, how they're using data, AI, and more. So Mark and I will present key findings of the report, which is available for free if you haven't downloaded already. You can find that link in the resources, and we'll also have the link at the end as well. I encourage you to read the full report, but we'll hit some of the highlights and then bring on speakers in their areas of expertise to add some context and outline some of the opportunities. And then we'll all be together toward the end to take your questions and go a little deeper on any questions and issues we want to explore in more depth. So we've got a lot to cover. So let's begin. We conducted a survey earlier this year of 600 restaurant operators to get a sense of what they're seeing, what they're up against. This is our 3rd annual Restaurant Technology Outlook Report. So we're starting to see some interesting trend lines as restaurants become a little more sophisticated, what they're up against, what their challenges are. And you'll see we have some integration headaches and other things that are plaguing them a little bit. But let's start with where we are, kind of level set. And we always ask in these surveys, will you be investing in new technology in the next year, either upgrading existing systems or adding new capabilities? And the answer pretty overwhelmingly is yes. This has been true in all the surveys we've done broadly, but we saw some interesting changes this year. You have 13% saying, no, I don't expect to, but everyone else has had some degree of yes, possibly, probably, or definitely. That broadly has held true over the last year or two of surveys. But this year we saw an increase in the people saying definitely. That was up 4 percentage points. And because the no's didn't change, we're seeing that that's shifting from the possiblies and the probablys to the definitely. So while broadly investment trends are holding steady year over year, there's a little bit of increased urgency and certainty. So we can expect to see some moves from restaurant operators in the next year. A little more kind of baseline foundational info on where their heads are on all this. We asked, how important is tech to your business? And the answer is very. 95% saying it's some level of importance to their success. So they're seeing that their fortunes are really tied to how well their tech stacks can help them meet their goals. Now, what are those goals? We asked a little bit about what their business objectives are, and we'll see in a moment how technology is how they plan to use technology to support them. So they cluster around a few key areas, driving the top line being the biggest one. So when asked to choose one key priority for the year ahead, increasing traffic was at the top of the list. You can see that they're also looking to use improved marketing, greater spend on each visit, and new revenue streams to continue to drive that top line. But that's really the focus as they think about technology and their other goals. It's going to be on driving traffic. Cost control, of course, is a perennial concern. So we see that come up in a few ways as well. Reducing operating costs broadly, as well as a focus on labor. We'll talk a little bit more about the relationship between labor and tech later, increasing productivity and streamlining back of the house operations. And this last one, back office analysis, is interesting. It's a small percentage, but it increased notably from last year. And we'll see, we saw throughout the report, there were a lot of opportunities around data and integration and efficiency. And so we're hearing from the operators in this survey that they're really looking to make sure that their back office is set up to support all the opportunities and get the most out of their technology. So I'm going to kick it to Mark to talk about specifically how they're going to use tech investments to get at those broader goals as they move ahead in the next year. So Mark, take it away.
Thanks, Christy. The question to ask here is, not what the goals are. We just saw that in the last slide, but where are we putting our money and investing our IT budgets to actually bring about those goals? And the good news there is that where operators say that they're making their investment, it's coherent with what they said those goals are, top line growth, managing our costs. And I think that what we see here in this list is that things that are going to fill the sales funnel and also manage the customer facing elements of, a typical restaurant transaction, those are up at the top where people are going to be spending most of their money. The POS systems, those are what actually managed to get that done. And where it says back of house operations, that's where our respondents were, it was explained to them that could mean things like a kitchen digital system, the KDS or other kitchen technology. So really, that's where we're seeing a lot of the investment. It's aligned with what they say they want to get done. Now, what's really, I think, interesting to note here is where some of the growth has been. We ask these questions year over year, so we're seeing some great trend lines. And I just think that we're seeing growth in the importance of integrations and data management. And I think that it's going to drive investments in a really productive way. And we'll hear more about that from our panelists as well, but it's a pretty, I think, heartening sign to see. Oh, sorry, let me go back 1 second there. Got a little ahead of myself there. We just wanted to give a look at things by segment. And you can see that where the planned investments are, the limited service segments, again, are very, very top line focused. In some combination, they're looking at expanding their digital ordering channels to get more of those transactions for delivery and other off-premises kinds of transactions. Or, they want to bolster their digital marketing to kind of get more people through the door, improve their loyalty offerings and things like that. And again, the POS systems are going to be a pretty big part of that. We want to make sure that we can actually manage the traffic that we want to drive through into the stores. Now, I think that casual dining has some different needs. We can point out in some interesting ways. Again, they're looking to increase their traffic as well. So the investments in digital marketing make sense there. But then their needs are going to be different, where they're going to be the ones to elevate front of house operations a little bit more. Labor management is going to be a little bit more salient for them, because I think that they tend to run their restaurants with more people in the first place, and their scheduling needs might be to cover sections and shifts. So, those are the ways that these broke down. But again, it's still aligned with this overall goal of driving traffic. But as we're trying to add these capabilities to grow our top line, it does bring up the other side of it, which is there are going to be these issues around integrations and making sure that the tech stacks work well together with all these components. So we'll see in responses to later questions in this survey that there's some dissatisfaction right now with the current state of integrations, or with our ability to get our data sets to work together. About 1 in 5 people are saying, well, we're struggling with these data silos, which just means that it's harder for us to get our data to make sense in ways that make useful customer segments, or can reveal, the right play in a marketing campaign. And so those stats that we see down at the bottom of this slide, it's reiterating what we saw on the last slide, that more people are starting to invest in things like data management and data security, integrations and APIs, and these levels of investment have grown year over year. And because that's so salient, we wanted to bring in 2 of our panelists right now, Brian Wayne from QSR Automations, Keith Saw from Esper, because guys, there are really interesting questions that these data points bring up for Christy and for me. Just this whole notion about the right way to scale up your tech stack. You want to add capabilities and build. Brian, I'd like to begin with you, because no matter what an operator kind of uses as their source of truth for their tech stack, if they're kind of building everything around the POS or maybe around a kitchen digital system, there are a lot of components that need to work together. And so if you're working with a potential client and advising them on the right way to build as you go, to add capabilities, what are the things that they need to keep in mind to make sure that it's going to work the way that they want it to?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So we believe that the kitchen is the heart of the restaurant, and with something as important as the kitchen, we believe that a best-of-breed KDS is really needed. We often see where the point of sale system may be switched out every few years, but having the kind of that single source of truth with running your restaurant, which is that the kitchen system, no matter where the orders are coming from, they're all flowing through your kitchen. You've kind of protected your investment there. The key is selecting solutions that have flexible and well-documented APIs and webhooks, and existing integrations as well are kind of a benefit that kind of allow you to connect all your different solutions throughout your tech stack together, so you don't end up in that siloed situation. Our philosophy is really to stay focused on what we do best and then integrate to the rest. So not necessarily do everything for everyone, but have a system in place that's flexible enough to tie to all the other systems in your stack. So for example, things like, in our world, incorporating location awareness solutions that might show the guest location on the kitchen display screen, or feeding order status, order ready notifications, or updated quote times to the guests, for off-premise orders, or accepting reservations or wait lists, digitally from other partners or, third-party solutions, or even as simple as, feeding historical speed of service data back to your data warehouse or reporting tool. So in summary, I recommend taking a hard look at your entire stack and kind of decide what's best for you. I wouldn't implement technology just for the sake of implementing technology. It has to solve a pain point for either your employees or your guests.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Brian. And I wanted to bring in Keith here too, because what you just said, I think it all fits in a piece of this, which is, as these things grow and we're adding these capabilities and we're trying to serve guests in this way, it's not just a capability that we add. We also are adding a lot of different systems themselves, pieces of hardware, devices. So much more happens in the front of the house now, with servers having their own handheld devices, or there might be kiosks and terminals that we're incorporating. And Keith, as we do that, as this gets more complicated from a device and hardware perspective, how do we keep this more secure? Before you and I talked, I'd never heard about mobile device management, but it makes all the sense in the world. Can you explain more of that?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And that's a key point. So at Esper, we provide device management infrastructure for what's called dedicated use cases. And this is essentially what restaurant operators need. And as you well know, restaurant technology is judged by two levers from an ROI perspective, right? You got your cost control that you pull down, and you want to push your revenue growth forward. From our point of view, the true ROI comes from technology that scales without adding complexity. And that's where MDM comes into play. So from an Esper perspective, we help operators from a baseline lock down these devices, be able to update and control them across all sites in a uniform manner from your IT staff. Doing it remotely, that's key, because you want to minimize that manual work that you do. You don't want to store manage or dealing with it, and the on-site visits that may be required. So this is about reducing those truck rolls and minimizing downtime. But there's the flip side of it, is also speeding out new rollouts. A lot of things are happening, and so you're doing app updates, you're rolling out your new hardware, you have OS updates that you have to deal with in this world. And how do you effectively and efficiently control it? So this leads to direct cost savings and arguably better margins. Now, the key is, once you have this foundation in place, it really puts you on the path to unlock innovation. So think about these new use cases that you want to launch: kiosks, signage, loyalty programs, leading into other tools like AI and putting you in position to do so. And all this deployed securely and consistently across what we call your fleet, your sites, your location, efficient manner.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we're going to come back a couple of times throughout the rest of the talk here of, time saved, is money saved, is money earned. So it's all this balance, of capability, but efficiency, and it allows for further innovation. So guys, thank you so much for giving us those answers as we go here. We'll bring you guys back at the end here when all of our panelists get a chance to answer more. But for now, we'll keep things moving. So Christy, I'll turn it back over to you. We're going to talk about the operations piece of all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've set us up really well. I think it's so interesting, Mark. We know from year to year on these surveys, we've really watched the integration headaches kind of ramp up this year. I think it really came through loud and clear. And I think the security piece is interesting as well. That was another one that used to rank pretty low as a priority, and we're seeing ramp up. We used to get responses that were like, I'm collecting all the data and I want data everywhere all the time, but I don't really care about security, and those things just don't really go together. So I think they're touching on two issues that really emerged from this report this year. But digging into how we make it all happen day to day in terms of operations, Brian talked a little bit about the kitchen, but we're going to get into some other opportunities as well. But first, some of the challenges. We ask every year, what are the biggest challenges you face in terms of building your tech stack? And we saw some interesting changes this year. We get a lot of the usual suspects every year. Cost is always up there. But when pressed to choose just one top challenge, we saw that it was actually not a tech challenge per se, but a people challenge. The lack of staff to manage tech rollouts was at the top of the list. And that could be everything from whether it's at the corporate level, teams that are vetting and deciding on what to bring into the business, whether that's new data skill sets that need to be adopted, all the way down to the unit level when it comes to training and making sure that every person that's touching these systems knows how to use them and feels empowered by them. This was an option that is up 7 percentage points year over year. It was, I believe, 5th on this list last year, and it leapfrogged concerns about cost and integration and functionality. So how companies structure their roles around tech, their people roles and their human capital, I think is going to be really interesting to watch in the coming years, and kind of figuring out that push-pull between where does technology support the employees and where are people and employees needed to support the rollout of the tech. So that's going to be one area I wanted to flag to watch, but it's part of several integration and implementation challenges that they flagged for us. You can see elsewhere on this bar in yellow, data silos among tech partners, and to some degree within their own organizations, another difficulty. But people at the top of the list, I think, are going to be a difference maker on whether or not tech does what it needs to do and gets that ROI that everyone is after. Costs, of course, always an issue, both for hardware and recurring costs for software. So that's something that's been kind of a perennial thing. It's sort of table stakes with technology, but it is top of mind, and it's part of, as we spoke about earlier, it's one of those levers. It's part of that ROI equation when they're thinking about their technology. And then we're still seeing some degree of knowledge gaps around lack of understanding about what's out there. A little further down, you can see some overwhelm at the many types of tech solutions out there. So third on the list, there's still a little bit of uncertainty and lack of clarity under the surface there. And then finally, functionality. It's got to work. You have more than a quarter of people saying they're lacking some functionality that they need. And elsewhere on the list, maybe they're seeing bells and whistles that they don't need or don't use. So a little bit of a lack of fit there. And Mark, I know you're going to talk a bit about satisfaction elsewhere that dovetails with that, really well. Mm-hmm. But thinking about how we're using technology to reach the customer in many different ways, either outside the restaurant or in the stores using digital touch points, we asked, what digital touch points are you offering your customers? And we see third-party delivery had the greatest penetration at more than half. Around a third are using mobile apps, order ahead and pickup platforms. First-party delivery catering platforms. And then there are a handful of others further down, like reservation management systems, kiosks, and tablets in the stores. All of these numbers, I think there's a bit of runway. There's some opportunity here. These are not eye-popping numbers in a lot of cases. So I think that we can expect to see some greater adoption from operators in the coming year. And there were some differences, some logical differences along segment lines. Limited service were far more likely to say that they have kiosks, whereas a full-service brand was more likely to say they have self-service tablets or some other handhelds in the stores. And I also wanted to flag further down the list, the voice AI. We're seeing that for all its excitement and opportunity, it may be early days in terms of adoption, but we're going to talk more in a moment about where operators are in terms of their understanding of AI, and we'll have a chance to talk with some of our panelists on the specifics. So on the topic of AI, this is a fun one. We have had the opportunity to ask questions about how operators are using artificial intelligence in their businesses for our three surveys, annual surveys, the first of which launched in early 2023, just weeks after ChatGPT launched. So in that 2-year span, things have changed a lot. And of course, artificial intelligence has been baked into a lot of software for many, many years, but it's really become a household name, something that I know I use all the time in my daily life, which was not true 2 years ago. So we're starting to see greater understanding, but there's still some knowledge gaps and some pain points here. So we asked the simple question, are you using AI in your business? A little more than 1 in 5, or 21%, said yes. On the other side of the spectrum, 28% said no, and I don't have any plans to. It's not for me, at least not right now. But I want to direct your eye, or where your eye probably already is, that giant slice at the bottom. Just over half of people saying they're not currently using AI, but they'd like to. They're curious and they're interested. Now, many of them probably are using it in the sense that it's already baked into some of the tools that they use in their businesses. So it's reflective of a knowledge gap, either about where it already exists in their businesses or where they could add it. So there may be some lack of understanding in that sense, but it shows that there needs to be some education and clarity brought to operators on this front. So what we did using this question is basically looked at the 3 personas that it reveals to kind of show some opportunities about where they are on their AI journey. So we see that the 2 slices at the top there, people who are using AI are more likely to be chains. On the flip side, independents are more likely to say they're not using AI yet. And that's likely a reflection of not only the size of their budgets, but also the need for scalability and consistency across larger systems. And I wanted to point out, too, that 51% who say, oh, I'm not using it now, whether or not that's exactly right, but I'm interested in it, that was up pretty significantly from a year ago when 35% of people said that. So there's a lot of uncertainty and kind of unrest in this middle front. So we'll dive a little bit deeper into each of these personas right now. So first, let's look at those people who are using AI, these early adopters or AI adopters. We asked them, where are you using it now and where do you want to use it next? So this group told us that right at the current moment, they're using it for a lot of marketing and customer service opportunities, a lot of customer-facing ways, whether that's taking orders, answering phones, and then sales and traffic forecasting to the degree that that's going to make sure you have the right amount of labor, orders are accurate and fast. So all of this is going to work towards and be really embedded in the customer experience and customer-facing, whether or not they know that they're interacting with artificial intelligence tools. When asked where they'd like to add AI next, they're really starting to bring it more behind the scenes, into the kitchen, making sure that prep and inventory are optimized, personalizing the guest experience through data analysis and better segmentation of their customers. So I think we can expect to see a lot more use from these early adopters. They kind of show us where the wind is blowing. They've knocked off some of the initial marketing and customer-facing opportunities, but now they're going to some of the quieter, kind of under the hood uses that will really optimize their operations, help manage costs, and boost efficiency. So that next persona, the people who are curious about AI but say they're not using it yet, we asked where you'd like to and where you see the most opportunity. And they told us kind of everywhere. You can see they've got a lot of ideas about where AI might bolster different areas of their business. Inventory management comes again at the top, labor management, and then the forecasting of sales and traffic that's going to help you do both of those things. So there's a lot of people looking to use that to optimize. And that aligns pretty closely with the kind of next tier goals of the group we just spoke about. Further down the list, you see a lot of other marketing opportunities and ability to upsell and interact with customers. So I think it will be very interesting to see how this group makes moves in the next year, either adding new tools or recognizing where AI tools already exist in their business, because they clearly have a lot of pent-up excitement and curiosity around it, but maybe a little bit of an education piece is needed. And this final group I find really interesting, these AI cautious or AI avoidant group. I think they kind of crystallize some of that uncertainty that we see even in the other answers, is they're just not seeing the use cases yet. They told us in a couple ways on this list, we're going to take a wait and see approach. We're going to let other people try and fail, and then we're going to follow their lead. Elsewhere, they said it doesn't have understandable use cases, or I don't see the ROI. There was some concern about security, either with concerns within the business or maybe customers aren't ready. But for the most part, they kind of told us over and over again, I just don't see the on the ground, day-to-day uses for this yet. And I think at the bottom of that list there, that big 24% bar kind of just puts a bow on the uncertainty of all of it. They don't even know why they're not using it. So I think this was just kind of a big neon sign that says there's a lot of questions about AI, how to use it, where to use it, what it means. And so we're going to ask our panelists a little bit more about that, and if they're seeing some of these same operator personas in their view as well. So with that, I'd love to bring on Scott and Jeff to talk about some of the themes that this most recent section has brought on. There you are, guys. So Scott, let's start with you. We talked about a couple of themes that I know are we've spoken about before. The importance of people and labor in a tough labor environment, technology that empowers people, takes away some of the the challenging things, smooths out operations, and uses data to do it. From your POV, how can technology help restaurants streamline operations and support their staffs, to some of the way that, the themes that we've discussed so far?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, right? Our view at OpenTable has been that what AI should really help do is enhance hospitality. I think there's quite a lot of themes here that we've seen. You mentioned, obviously, around, the challenges around labor. And ultimately, we think that, as you've seen in your data, the shift's more towards people looking at how AI can actually support on the back end. The idea there, hopefully, is that some of those labor-intensive things, like deciding turn times, like deciding table combinations, and party sizes, which might have been something of trial and error. Now we're in a place where, we have AI being able to actually analyze, take that data and make proactive recommendations, which is something we've recently released in one of our products, which then means that you're taking out that guesswork, but also you're taking out the time that it needs to actually formulate, those decisions. AI then is really helping to step in, use real world data, make positive recommendations so that ultimately you can use that time, where teams want to use that time, which is enhancing the dining experience, enhancing the guest experience. And ultimately, that's also something that AI is really supporting with right now, is consolidating those views of diners and really taking that pertinent information and then putting that front and center so that it's easy then for front of house teams to actually look at that, see that, and then take that information and disseminate it then into service and into how they're actually treating their guests, which again might have been something in the past which would have been fragmented over different data sources, different places. AI is now finding a way to consolidate that. So in those two examples alone, you're saving people time, and you're ultimately then, when you've got the pressures on time, you're able to, use that saved time to ultimately put that back into enhancing the experience of the diner. And that's why, we're seeing a lot of investment in our guest relationship management tools as well, for that exact reason, because we want to use AI to take all of that information to enhance the hospitality that people can give rather than taking away from it. And there's some other things that we're thinking and seeing. And obviously, being a global partner as well, what we can do is take all of those insights. I think there's something in the data there as well, but people are a little bit uncertain. And I think that's why it's very important that you're working with a partner that has a view on that can actually come to you and make recommendations and share some of their experience of what best in class looks like. And as a partnership, help you decide what's best versus what maybe we're seeing a little bit right now is some people seem to be a little bit in the dark and a little bit unsure and not quite aware of where to turn. That's why it's really important that you work with the right partner as well on that. So yeah.
That's great. Jeff, I'd love to go to you kind of on the same thread of, we saw a lot of uncertainty about where to use AI, and there's kind of this invisible mandate out there of like, you got to use AI, and it's AI. What should operators actually be asking themselves in terms of how to solve problems that are in front of them and where it fits in their business? And as much as you can, kind of bring it down to earth of like, paint a picture of what it looks like when AI tools are used effectively in restaurants to kind of maybe clear the air for people who took our survey or on the webinar today that have some of these questions.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think you're really focusing in on AI as a problem solver, and really it's like what are the real problems that restaurants have today, and how can AI solve some of those? And when we were looking at it, I actually left a large restaurant company to solve one of those problems, and it was simply I was looking at our brand and watching the phone ring off the hook, and we were missing orders, missing opportunities to serve our guests, and ultimately missing revenue. So at SoundHound, we've built a suite of products that's just that. We're there to manage and monitor conversations with guests so that we're serving the guests, but we're also serving the operators' need, operations needs, and marketing's needs. We specifically, we've all had that experience where, like let's say you walk up to counter ordering and no one is there to answer the phone except for the person answering the counter. So you're about to order and they'll pick up the phone, they'll look right at you, and then they'll sort of turn their back to you, give you the phone Heisman and take an order. It's like, okay, well that's not the guest experience that you want for my guests that are like actually in my restaurant location. Or we've also had the experience conversationally where you pull up to the drive-through, maybe you have some automated greeter turned on, and then you sit there and you stare at this metal post for an uncomfortably amount of time until you finally sort of build the courage to say something like hello, and then someone's like, just give me a minute, right? So you're not really serving that guest need. And so our focus has been like, what are real world problems that we have? And it's not that employees or operators have problems. It's that how can we, through AI, create a force multiplier to enhance that experience, not only for the customer, but for those in the store as well. So we built a suite of products specifically for phone or SMS, where we can take those calls out of the store. We can answer on the first ring. We can give a very personalized and humanized experience through AI to where we can answer guest questions. If we have access to the data, I can tell you where your order is. I can take the order for the store as needed. I can put the order into the store, or we can do the same thing in the drive-through. And it's not, we don't want to replace some of our key employees. We know that their ability to produce amazing meals for customers is really a focus, but how can we help them so that you don't have someone who's in a drive-through, the headset on, trying to take cash, trying to produce the order, and trying to service the window at the same time? Like, can we have the conversation on behalf of the store, maybe even let the people in the store listen so that they can make the food hot and fresh, like while we're having the conversation on their behalf, but make it a great user experience at the same time. So that's trying to find like those real problems. And then we don't always have, I think a lot of times we do focus on AI being sort of front and center with the consumer when a lot of people think about AI. And we also have products like our Voice Insights product, where it's like our AI can be a passive monitor for a brand. We can listen to phone calls, or we can monitor conversations between crew members and customers, so that if something isn't happening, or maybe something operationally isn't correct, the system can look at it and say, hey, for this location, for this store during this shift, it took over 10 seconds for someone to come onto the drive-through. And that gives a coaching point for maybe a store manager, or a team lead, or an area coach that didn't have that insight before. Yes, we have awesome timers on our drive-throughs, and we can sort of see like what is the throughput for the car, but like how well are we conversationally serving those guests? Those are opportunities where we have things, again, like Voice Insights that can tell, are we operationally efficient in the drive-through? If we were servicing Chick-fil-A, just as an example, like we've all been there. They're great operators. Everyone, knows they need to end the conversation with "my pleasure." But if you maybe have a new team member and then that's not happening through a certain shift, the system has no problems understanding that and providing that coaching opportunity or feedback back to the team member. Maybe we're hearing something. We'll use the infamous, well, I can't serve you ice cream, so product is out. But because there's an operational issue in my store, the system here is because the ice cream machine is broken. Well, again, the real world problems that we want to solve is we're able to monitor that conversation. We can even open tickets for your ticketing system. Like, we might be able to get repair folks out like while the crew is operating, without having to take them off the line and servicing customers where they are. So again, to your point, like we're really trying to find like, where does AI fit and really meet a problem that either operators are having, stores are having, team members are having, or bad customer experiences that customers are having, when really what we need is just a force multiplier, an operation, or an opportunity to really manage and monitor those conversations and provide a really good experience for the consumer.
That's great. Thank you both. And I know we'll come back. I'm seeing some questions come in that involve AI. We'll get to some of those at the end, but I appreciate you kind of crystallizing some of the use cases, since we heard so clearly in the data that some operators are struggling to see them and understand what this can mean for them. So I'm going to kick it over to Mark and RJ for the next section on data, and then we'll come all back together for questions and a little more discussion on some of these themes. So all yours, Mark.
Yeah. Thanks, Christy. I'm glad that Jeff was talking about different kinds of data that you can ingest, get more feedback on your performance, how you're doing. There's more for, our operators and area coaches to evaluate. And that really gets to a lot of what we wanted to talk to RJ about with data strategies. One of the first things that we talk about, if you've been with our webinars before, you've probably seen this question before about how confident operators are in their ability to really collect the data and put it to use. And this is in line with what we've seen in previous reports, where operators are more confident than not that they, are actually putting their data to good use. That number of folks that say they definitely do, that fluctuates between what you see now, about 16%. It's been as high as 25%. So, typically those are, folks at the extremes there, where they're the real edge cases of, being far ahead of the rest of the industry and sophisticated. But more often than not, folks are pretty confident in their ability to use data. It's just a matter of what they are looking to do. So we asked the question a little bit differently here, not just where are you putting your IT budget and spending your money, but what are you hoping to get out of those investments? What data set are you looking for that is going to affect some sort of business outcome? And here we see it's what's been elevated a little bit, slightly above driving the top line, are greater efficiency, better controls over cost, ways to save ourselves some time, which again, that saves money and that's money earned. And I think that I'm pretty heartened to see that folks are trying to get more data sources there in the middle of that bar chart to help them evaluate their strategies. I think that they're saying that if we have a better view into our data and into our performance, then we can really start to make positive, impactful changes to things like our marketing, our pricing strategies, and menu development. And that's definitely a piece that we'll hear from RJ. I think that what this exhibit here shows us is just that it's not necessarily deciding what data set to collect and finding it and finding a provider for it. That's the problem. I think that what is usually more difficult is just that next step in, okay, now that I've ingested the data, I'm fairly certain that, this is what I'm looking for. The data quality is there. How do I get it to work with other sets of data or other parts of my tech stack? And that's what the real challenge is. Seems like that's the real long-term challenge for our industry. And I'd love to have RJ come on for this, because we've talked a lot before about not just finding the right data set that's going to work for you, but then also making it work. So RJ, if you could you just sort of explain how folks can find, what they need to find in the data set that they're evaluating? What does it need to do on its own? And then can you explain again, we've heard from you before about the real unlock that happens when we can combine data sets and get them interacting with each other and really making some higher order determinations with it.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And I think it's a great question to start with too. It does very much coincide with what we've seen with a lot of our restaurant customers, is that we're at a point right now. There's a lot of data collection taking place. A lot of operators we talk to really have a pretty good handle on the what is going on. How many people are coming to their stores, how efficient certain things are, but they really don't have that ability to tie things together. They don't know how to get that why and the how out of that too. And, it's a little bit like the AI adoption question that we talked about earlier. We're very early stages in kind of the ways to bring this together. And to be honest, you ask, the best way for groups to do it. I really think it depends on really two things. One, the category that you're in. The way to tie this data together may not be the same for a QSR operator as it is for a casual dining operator. It may be very different from a chain compared to independent. And we saw that in the results of the survey there too. So I think it's a little bit of a case-by-case situation here too. And it ultimately depends on, one, what is the most direct outcome that you want to solve for? What is the biggest pain point for what you want to solve? Ultimately, going through all the answers today, I think that really most restaurant operators today are probably dealing with more complexity than they ever had before. Because I think if you tie back to each one of the answers, whether it be driving top line, whether it be driving cost savings, it really comes down to simplification more than anything else. I want all this to work together, make my life easier. So I can focus on running this business. So I want to figure out a way to do that. Admittedly, tying these data sets is not easy together. There are some technologies, and this is an area where we're starting to see some AI technologies really come in to better tie these data sets together. Agential AI, some of these things that you can go put a bunch of data in and give me the outcomes. Maybe tie my visitation data, my loyalty program data, start to tie all this together and get some meaningful insights, not only from kind of top line, what are the promotions I should be running? What are the products I should be developing? Are there things that I can glean from my trade areas in terms of developing, efficiencies? Are we as efficient as the stores in our neighborhood? Are we as efficient as the drive-through operator down the street? Things like that, and start to pull it all together. So I think it really comes down to just the different need states that really any restaurant is trying to solve for. Really kind of take a look. What is the number one outcome you're trying to solve for? What data are we collecting? And have we started to think about ways to bring this together? Have we started to look into agential AI? We started to look into some of these ways to kind of bring all this data to tie together. So I think that's kind of the way to think about it right now. It's admittedly a very difficult task, and I don't think, honestly, if you ask any operator and they say they do it really well, I'd probably challenge that at this point. It's something that we're very early stage, but I think it is one of those areas that is really exciting to me. It really has been AI and kind of data, machine learning, those things. It's really been focused more on the consumer side. And to the survey, We're going to start to see that more in the back of the house, some of the more operational stuff. I think this could really be a breakthrough year, particularly as we start to see a more challenged, potentially even more costly environment for restaurant operators that typically spurs on some adoption for some of these technologies and really look for efficiency. So I think that's going to be the interesting thing this year. Can we start to see some of this move from more the consumer-facing side to more the back of the house and kind of understanding, can I use this for keeping employees happy and retention things? Can I do it for measuring efficiency? And I think that's going to be the real breakthrough this year.
Totally agree. And there are things we didn't even touch on. Things like learning management and training, where I can totally see those use cases that you're talking about too. And we might be getting into that a little bit in the Q&A as well. But I wanted to give all of our panelists here the chance to kind of come back and participate here at the end, because we've got a lot of really great questions coming in through the queue that I've been watching. Christy, I'll turn it over to you to kind of get us kicked off here with one of the first ones that we saw, and I'll be popping in here and cracking wise when I find a question or two for the rest of our panelists.
Great. Well, a lot of them are really drilling in on this AI, and that's kind of where the conversation has gone anyway, and some of the juiciest data from the survey too. So let's stay there. But there was really one that was really about like where to start. Where does one start with AI and exploring the data that they have? We've talked about a lot of different use cases, but to the larger ROI question of this whole conversation, if I'm an operator that's a little uncertain and I know let's say I've identified my problem. I at least understand I need to spot my problem and then go from there. Where do I begin? And I'd love to invite all of you to come back on camera and we'll just all talk together about some of these issues. But, what's kind of step one if you say, I've identified this problem. I think AI can solve it. I think I have the data that it would need to do that, but I'm kind of lost. What question should I be asking myself? Where do I begin? And this can go to any of you to start, just kind of continue the AI thread that we're already on.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think there's really two sides to start to ask. Like, am I having a transactional operational problem where am I looking for AI to engage with the customers or crew members, or am I looking to engage with data and look for insights? Like our friends at Pacer AI, like we don't do what they do, and they don't do what SoundHound does. Is we're more customer engagement, operations engagement. So I think, and that seems to be where a lot of the world is going from an AI perspective. Is am I looking for an AI agent to be involved with my consumers, or am I looking for an AI agent to be involved with my data and give me a lot of insights into what's going on inside my operations? Like, and the same with the open table. It's like, do you have a data problem, or do you have a consumer and operational issue? So that's kind of how if we have customers come to us and are asking us for something that's clearly a pure data focus, we'll definitely push them to one of our good partners, as opposed to like we'll solve operational and consumer focused issues with our AI engaging with customers and operations.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that, because I do think at the end of the day, as a restaurant operator, you're there to manage your restaurant. You are not necessarily, unless you're a large organization with a dedicated data and AI team, you are there really to satisfy customers, to manage an efficient restaurant. Ask questions, come to your partners. And to the point about AI, there's a lot of AI providers out there. All of us do something a little bit different, but we're all in the period of kind of exploring ways to interact. We should be the ones kind of helping you bridge these different data sets together. That's really on your data partners. So be asking them the same question. Be proactive. Help them. Come to them with a challenge. This is what we're trying to do with our data. Is this something we can do? And we typically, either through integrations we've built or other, reaching out to other partners, there's usually a way we can start to bridge it together and solve that issue. So ask a lot of questions, be in front of your data partners. It really is a partnership in these cases, and we should be helping you solve some of these things. You shouldn't be going in on alone, really.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Ask your partner. The other thing I was thinking was ask AI. At the end of the day, Gemini, ChatGPT, there's a lot of people maybe a little bit trepidatious, but like try it out. A lot of these products are quite free. Ask AI what it thinks. Summarize your thoughts, put it in, and let it consolidate for you. And I think even some of those types of challenges then, can help you streamline things, and then that might then be able to indicate to you. But if you've got a great partner, reach out to them because I'm sure they've got a view on it.
Yeah, and to jump onto that, I think it's important for you to become familiar with AI, right? You have to build that context of what you can do with AI, and to do that, you have to become intimate with it. So Gen AI is a great way to do it. And then when you look at like the deployments, the use cases, 𝗪𝗡𝗡, we're an infrastructure company. So we kind of view it across many different verticals and kind of the action of how AI is being prototyped and adopted. And so for restaurant operators, it's kind of like your size and your segment is going to be very important. Where I think if you're just getting started, working with ISVs and partners is a great way to do it, because you can see these AI capabilities are now increasingly being built into products that you utilize. And in addition, there's a whole host of new products and offerings that are coming out. And go out and talk to them, find out what they're doing, get their pitches, and kind of fill your brain with the context of what's going on. Because from that, I think you can formulate your AI strategy that makes sense for you. We deal at two extremes. We have some customers that are training their own LLMs, and they're doing it in a very sophisticated manner. And they kind of have a different set of needs where they're looking at how can we take an aging fleet that doesn't have AI capability on location and turbocharge it with AI in the proper way? How do we go on that path and journey? And then at the other end is like, how do we just offer AI and have an efficient manner to be able to do it that hits our KPIs for what we're trying to do with a restaurant?
I love that. Anyway, real quick before we move to the next question, RJ, maybe could you turn your camera off and then back on again? I see you, or I see a little box for you. I could hear you, but I wasn't getting video.
Yeah,
I don't know if you're having any issues. We can hear you fine, but
I keep trying.
may have a visual. I will
It's not a
keep
problem.
going, but I
You were
just wanted to
clicking with
flag
that
that
one,
for
so
you.
we didn't want to stop you.
Your lovely face is up on the slide either way, so we'll keep going. Lots of questions about AI. I love how we've kind of gone deep on this. We talked about some of the use cases, but I'd love to do almost just like a rapid fire. Someone here is saying, what can I use AI for? Give me some more examples, please. So is there kind of a quick, we talked a little bit about drive-through. We talked about assisting employees. What are some of the kind of rapid fire? You can do this, you can do that, you can do that. Hey, did you know you could do this? If you were to each give, 2 or 3 quick, hey, here's this cool thing. Let's throw out a bunch of cool use cases for people who are wondering this.
Yeah, I can start. For SoundHound, we have over 13,000 locations using our AI to answer phones, take orders, answer questions for those customers. So we're taking orders, sending them directly into POS systems. I'm able to tell you anything about the restaurant that we're able to source data from. So whether you're open, closed, where you're located, can send you links to menus or push you into employment information. We can do like real use cases. I think also people are asking, is it effective? Like we have AI on in multiple drive-throughs across the world, from Australia to the UK to the United States. And I think part of like, is it effective? I was literally right before this was looking at the statistics for human-led drive-throughs for brand in the UK, and they were taking over 2 minutes to get orders through. Our system's taking about 1.5 minutes. So if you take that 55 seconds and apply it to the amount of throughput of the cars, is it a real product? Can you generate revenue? It's like there's no question that there are real valid use cases for on the transactional side, much less the data or hospitality side. That there are real use cases out here for supporting and answering questions or taking orders for clients.
Excellent. Scott, do you want to throw out a kind of a couple of, for someone who's feeling lost, here's a couple quick use cases that you should know about or think about?
Within the restaurant world, I think obviously from the creative side, by all means, lean into Gen AI to get inspiration or to create copy. I think a lot of the time, if it's a busy operation, it's hard sometimes to have that space to think creatively. So AI is helping there a lot. I think we're seeing quite a lot of advancements on that. I think if you're working with a partner that's got something like OpenTable has in terms of operational help or review responses and aggregation, AI is doing some great things there. So lean into that as well, because obviously that helps you respond to good and to maybe not as good experiences, so that you can actually work on those relationships with your customers as well. So I think there's a couple of things there that people should be looking at and that they can get access to pretty quickly, which we're seeing is having some good advantages for people that are doing it.
Excellent.
Thank you, Scott. There's a question that came in just now from the audience, and Brian, if you don't mind, I would love to put this to you into QSR automations, because I think it's pretty important to what you guys do. A person from the audience has asked, the best way to develop a tech stack that integrates, well, so that all the data is pulled together kind of in one place, ideally maybe on one pane of glass. But I think what this person is asking about is whatever the source of truth ends up being, what's the best way for us to set up our tech stacks so that we have all of that critical data kind of in one place where we know what to make sense of it. I know you guys do lots of really great stuff with different dedicated screens on the KDS, but bigger picture, how should we think about that?
Yeah, data is king, right? And so our strategy has always been, we want to share as much real-time and historical data with you as we can. We often see people will show that on their kitchen screens or their front of house host stations, in real time. But what we find a lot is, we every interaction that takes place in our system, we're tracking and we're making that available, both locally and up in the cloud. So we give all of our users the ability to kind of take that and run with it. Some people want to, give me all the front of house data, every touch point as somebody goes through the journey in a table service restaurant of being added to the wait list and being seated and being, working their way through their meal. And then also in the kitchen side, every touch point of when a cook starts making the food to when they expedite it out of the window. So we provide all the access to every single one of those data points, almost to a extremely granular level. And it kind of allows you to kind of do with it what you want. Some people will build it into their own, reporting tools. Some people will integrate it into sales data from the point of sale and everything else. But, and then we're always looking at how can we take that data and incorporate it better into our own product, whether it's, dialing in quote times for off-premise orders or wait list or everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm seeing
Christy, what do you think in terms of time for more?
I was going to try to squeeze in one more because this is just too good. So we do one.
Yeah,
should we do one more question? So I'm seeing a handful of questions, so I'll kind of try to synthesize them. We saw a lot in the data about integration headaches, and there have been a few questions coming through saying, I'm struggling with, I can't get, an existing partner to share API information with me, or I can't get this data set to talk to that data set. The question Mark just asked was about how do you set things up so everything can talk to each other. If you were to give kind of one tip to operators looking to ease some of these things, or maybe not start new partnerships that are going to cause headaches down the road, what are the questions they should be asking? What are the filters they should have on as they're deciding their partners and making those decisions? So what's one tip to either solve existing integration headaches or maybe avoid some in the future? Kind of rapid fire. We'll go through each of you and then we'll wind down.
So I can say from the SoundHound side, you as an operator, you shouldn't be worried about that. You should you want a partner that you show up to. At SoundHound, we don't want you to lift a finger. We'll do the integrations for you. We'll do all the data integration for you. You should be able to come to your partner and say, this is the problem I'm having, and you're looking for your solution provider to actually solve that solution. So that's how we work. We handle all of the integration points for you, including up to displaying on your digital menu boards, like when you're in the drive-through, to partnering for information inside the restaurant. Like all of that integration is handled on our side.
Excellent. I think that's a great thing. Great advice. Keith, let's go to you next. For someone looking to make sure that systems are working together and, critically they're secure, and, what should operators be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, the basics is, when you do your due diligence, do they have a REST API definition, right? Do they publish it publicly? And will that supplier share the data with you should you want or need it? So that kind of reflects our philosophy at 𝗪𝗡, being an infrastructure provider. We can be completely cloud driven. We give you an operator console. And if you want to get that low level data that comes off these devices that you can do interesting and novel things with against AI, that's what we supply. So I think that's the key. I mean, that balances out to the earlier point of turnkey may be the way you want to go now, right? It's all ready to go. You can experiment with AI, you can learn, and that may be sufficient for what you do and where you're at. Others are going to build it themselves. And to do that, they need to be able to source this low-level data. And so you have to know, can you get it or not? And that's kind of a basic upfront that you should figure out and decide, based on the answer, what you want to do.
Excellent. Brian, let's go to you next. Advice to make sure you're working with the right partners and that everything is working together well.
Yeah, to me, it's data availability. It's APIs that are accessible and well documented. Just like Keith said, as long as you going in, you understand what data outputs you can get out of the system, and then inputs that you can get into the system. It's going to set you up so that you're not, so far down the road and realize that you don't have the data that you need to integrate into one of the other systems that is critical.
Excellent. Scott, same question for you.
Yeah, I mean, not much to add, just making sure that you go into it with eyes wide open. I think it's a developing space as well. At OpenTable, for instance, we wouldn't have had public APIs maybe a few years ago, but now we've got them in spades, right? But also, I think asking the question as well, there's a lot of information out there that maybe is not 100% understood, and it's as time's evolving. Don't make assumptions. Ask your partner what is available, what can they do. Maybe don't assume that what is possible or isn't possible. Just be really transparent and clear. But I think, as everyone's kind of mentioned, you probably got some pretty clear indicators from the get-go. If there's publicly available API documentation, or there's publicly available information, that's a pretty good sign of intent. Or if it's more of a closed house and they want direct relationships, making sure then that the partners they work with, the partners that you want to work with as well. But it should all be transparent and all be something that's open and able to be discussed, and ask the right questions, get the right information, so you know what you're going into.
Excellent. And RJ, I'll let you wrap us up with the same question. What should operators be thinking about to avoid some of the integration pitfalls in the future?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off an earlier answer about just exploring some of the AI options that are out there. Start small. Take a couple of your data sets, put them into one of the available AI solutions that are out there, and see what comes of it. A lot of times people are just too busy. Now you just take a quick couple minutes to see what might come of it, and see what produces from there. I think if anything, that can start to give you some of the creative ideas that may be available, or maybe something there. Again, I think it ultimately falls on the partner on this one, but there are some ways to kind of start to think about it and just experiment small. That gives you at least kind of an idea of what might be out there. It gets you more fluent in AI and what's possible and the different technologies out there. So I say, if nothing else, give it a try. Try it yourself, see what might be out there, and that can start to help you spur that. You can go with your partner. Hey, this was able to give me a little bit more insight instead of just taking two data sets of, whatever it might be. It started to give me some insights from it. I want to be able to do this on a continuous basis. Challenge your partners on that.
Love that. So we will wrap up with that. We went a few minutes over, but the conversation was just too good. I wanted to see it through. We weren't able to get to every question, but we'll have an opportunity to maybe follow up with some of them later. I encourage you all to download the 2025 Restaurant Technology Outlook from Nation's Restaurant News and Restaurant Business, and with our sponsor partners who you've met today. The link is here. You can also get a link to download the report in the resources widget. I believe you can also get these slides in there as well. This webinar will be available on demand. You should get a link to the recording within 24 hours. So I just want to take a moment to thank all of our speakers for the fantastic conversation today. And thank you to their companies for their support, QSR Automations, SoundHound, Placer AI, OpenTable, and 𝗪𝗡. Fantastic conversation today, and we really appreciate your support on this annual report. Mark, thank you very much, and thank you all for joining us. On behalf of Nation's Restaurant News and Restaurant Business, have a great day.